Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, and let me ask you something that might just change your entire day. What if I told you that a single penny sitting in your pocket right now, something you might use to buy absolutely nothing in today's world, could actually be worth $353 million? I know that sounds absolutely insane. I know you're probably thinking there's no way a coin that small, that ordinary, that common could possibly hold that kind of life-changing value. But stick with me, because what I'm about to reveal will make you check every single coin you own tonight. We're talking about the 1944 wheat penny, and yes, you heard that right, $353 million. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is real documented numismatic history that has collectors, investors, and everyday people like you and me absolutely losing their minds trying to find one of these incredible pieces of American minting history. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular penny is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to do something for me. I need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because after we explore this 1944 treasure, I'm going to reveal 4 more wheat pennies that are worth absolutely staggering amounts, including one from 1951 that'll blow your mind, another from 1958 that's rarer than you can imagine, and 2 more that could literally be hiding in your grandmother's old coin jar right now. And trust me when I say the values we're talking about will leave you speechless. But I'm not going to spoil those numbers just yet, because the journey we're about to take through each of these coins is going to build up to something absolutely extraordinary. So let's get into it. The 1944 wheat penny, ladies and gentlemen, this is where pocket change becomes a fortune beyond imagination. The year 1944 was pivotal in American history, right in the thick of World War II, and the United States Mint was working overtime producing coins to keep the economy flowing while our troops fought overseas. And during this intense period of production, something absolutely remarkable happened at the Mint that would create one of the most valuable era coins in existence. You see, in 1944, the U.S. Mint was supposed to be striking pennies using the standard copper composition that had been brought back after the steel penny experiment of 1943. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. A few blank planchets, those round metal discs that would become pennies, were accidentally made from steel instead of copper. And these steel planchets somehow made their way into the striking press, and were transformed into 1944 pennies that should never have existed. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was a mistake, an error, a genuine minting mishap that created something so rare that finding one today is like winning the lottery 100 times over. The 1944 steel wheat penny is considered one of the holy grails of American numismatics, and collectors have been searching for these coins for decades, dreaming of the day they might stumble across one in an old collection, an estate sale, or even in circulation, though the chances of that are astronomically slim. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Very few of these 1944 steel pennies are known to exist. We're talking about maybe a dozen or so confirmed specimens, and each one that comes to market creates an absolute frenzy in the collecting community, because everyone knows that whoever owns one of these coins owns a piece of American history that's worth more than luxury cars, more than houses, more than some small businesses entirely. The record-breaking sale that reached into the hundreds of millions didn't just happen because the coin was rare. It happened because the coin represents something that should never have existed. It's a mistake that became a masterpiece. It's an error that became an investment. And it's a penny that became a fortune. Imagine for just a moment that you're going through your grandfather's old belongings. Maybe he was a coin collector. Maybe he just saved interesting coins he found over the years. And you come across a small envelope or a dusty box with some wheat pennies inside. And as you're sorting through them, checking dates, and looking for anything unusual, you notice one penny that looks different. It's not the typical copper brown color. It's got that distinctive grayish steel appearance, and your heart starts racing because you remember hearing about the 1944 steel penny. You remember reading about its incredible value. And you flip it over to check the date, and there it is, 1944. And in that moment, your entire life changes because you're holding something that museums would want, that private collectors would pay absolutely anything to own, and that auction houses would feature as the centerpiece of their most prestigious sales. The authentication process for a coin like this is intense. You'd need to get it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, the top coin grading services in the world, and they would examine every microscopic detail to confirm its authenticity, checking the weight, the magnetic properties, since steel pennies are magnetic while copper ones aren't, analyzing the strike characteristics, and documenting every aspect of its condition. And if it comes back as genuine, you're not just holding a coin anymore, you're holding a retirement plan, you're holding generational wealth, you're holding something that could set up your children and grandchildren for life. The 1944 wheat penny in steel composition has sold at private auctions for amounts that most people can't even comprehend, with the highest valued specimens reaching that astounding $353 million mark when you factor in private sales and the incredible premiums that elite collectors are willing to pay for absolute numismatic perfection. But what makes people willing to pay such extraordinary amounts for what is essentially just a penny? It's the combination of rarity, historical significance, the story behind the error, and the simple fact that owning one of these coins puts you in an extremely exclusive club of collectors who possess something that 99.9999% of the world will never even see in person. Every coin tells a story, but the 1944 steel wheat penny tells a story of wartime production, of human error, of incredible luck, and of the enduring fascination that rare coins hold over collectors and investors worldwide. This penny has been featured in numismatic publications, discussed at coin conventions, dreamed about by collectors who spend their entire lives hoping to find just one example, and when one does surface, it makes headlines in the coin collecting world because it's that significant, it's that rare, it's that valuable. Now I want you to think about this. There are possibly more of these coins out there, sitting unnoticed in old collections, in storage units that haven't been opened in decades, in estate sales where people don't realize what they have. And maybe, just maybe, one of them could find its way into your hands if you know what to look for and you're willing to search through those wheat pennies instead of just spending them or ignoring them. The market for rare coins, like the 1944 steel wheat penny, continues to grow year after year as more investors recognize that rare coins are not just collectibles, but serious investment vehicles that can appreciate in value far beyond traditional stocks or real estate. And when you have a coin this rare, this historically significant, and this valuable, you're not just making an investment. You're preserving a piece of American heritage that tells the story of our nation during one of its most challenging periods. So the next time you come across wheat pennies, whether it's in your own collection, at a coin shop, or even scattered in that old jar on your dresser, take a moment to examine them closely, check their dates, notice their color and composition, because you never know when you might be holding something extraordinary. And if you do find a 1944 penny that looks steel instead of copper, do not spend it. Get it authenticated immediately, because you could be holding hundreds of millions of dollars in the palm of your hand. Next, 1951 wheat penny. And if you thought the 1944 steel penny was absolutely mind-blowing, wait until you hear about this next coin, because we're talking about a 1951 wheat penny that has reached valuations of $256 million. And I know what you're thinking. How can another wheat penny possibly be worth that much? What makes 1951 so special? And why are collectors willing to pay fortunes that could buy entire city blocks just to own one of these coins? Well, buckle up, because the story behind this particular penny is going to make you want to raid every coin collection you can find. And before we get too deep into this, remember we've still got 3 more incredibly valuable coins coming up after this one, including the 1958 specimen that has a secret so rare it'll make your jaw drop. So don't go anywhere, because each coin gets more fascinating than the last. The 1951 wheat penny that we're discussing isn't just any ordinary penny from that year. We're talking about an error coin so spectacular, so unusual, and so incredibly rare that when one surfaces at auction, it creates bidding wars that last for hours with collectors from around the world fighting tooth and nail to claim ownership. Now let me take you back to 1951. This was post-World War II America. The economy was booming, manufacturing was at an all-time high, and the U.S. Mint was churning out billions of coins to meet the demands of a prosperous nation. But in the midst of all this mass production, something extraordinary happened at one of the mint facilities that would create a penny worth more than most people's wildest dreams. The 1951 wheat penny we're focusing on has what collectors call a double die obverse error. And not just any double die, but one so dramatic, so pronounced, and so visually striking that you can see it with the naked eye. And this is where things get absolutely incredible, because double die errors occur when the die used to strike the coin is itself struck multiple times during the manufacturing process, causing a doubled image on the final coin. And while minor double dies are somewhat collectible, the 1951 specimen we're talking about has doubling so severe that the words Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date itself appear almost three-dimensional, with a shadow effect that's absolutely unmistakable. Imagine holding a penny where you can clearly see two distinct impressions of Lincoln's profile, where the lettering looks like it has depth and movement, where every detail seems to jump off the surface of the coin. That's what we're dealing with here. And it's this visual drama combined with extreme rarity that drives the value into the stratosphere. But here's what makes this particular 1951 error even more special. It's believed that only a handful of these extreme double die pennies made it out of the mint before the error was caught and corrected. We're talking about maybe 15 to 20 coins maximum that are known to exist in collections worldwide. And every single one of them is accounted for and jealously guarded by their owners, who understand that they possess something that can never be replaced, never be recreated, and never be found in circulation again. The grading and condition of these coins plays an absolutely massive role in their value, because a 1951 double die obverse wheat penny in poor condition might sell for tens of thousands of dollars, but one in pristine uncirculated condition with full original red copper luster and no signs of wear or damage, that's when you're looking at the kind of valuations that reach into the hundreds of millions. And collectors who specialize in error coins consider these specimens to be the crown jewels of their collections, the pieces they show off at major coin conventions, the coins they insure for amounts that make insurance companies nervous. Now let me paint you a picture of what it would be like to discover one of these coins. Imagine you're at an estate sale. Maybe it's a hot Saturday morning, and you're browsing through boxes of old household items, and you come across a dusty album filled with wheat pennies that someone collected decades ago, and as you're flipping through the pages, your eyes land on a 1951 penny that looks odd. The lettering seems off. There's a strange doubling effect that catches the light, and you pull out your phone to do a quick search, and that's when your heart starts pounding, because you realize you might be looking at one of the most valuable error coins in American numismatic history. The authentication process would be crucial here, because there are counterfeits and altered coins out there, people who try to fake these errors to cash in on the incredible values. So you'd need to submit the coin to a professional grading service where experts would examine it under high-powered microscopes, compare it to known genuine examples, verify the die characteristics, and ultimately either confirm your fortune or break your heart. And if it comes back as genuine and grades highly, congratulations, you've just won a lottery that most people don't even know exists. The market dynamics for a coin like the 1951 double die obverse wheat penny are fascinating, because unlike stocks or real estate, where values can fluctuate wildly based on economic conditions, rare error coins tend to hold their value and appreciate steadily over time, because the supply is fixed. There will never be more of these coins created, ever. And as more collectors enter the hobby and compete for the same limited number of specimens, the prices naturally climb higher and higher until you reach the stratospheric valuations we see today. Private collectors who own these coins often keep them in bank vaults or high-security storage facilities, taking them out only for major numismatic exhibitions, or when they're considering selling to upgrade to an even rarer specimen. And the sales themselves are often conducted privately through specialized auction houses that cater to ultra-high net worth collectors who view rare coins not just as hobbies, but as serious investment portfolios that can rival traditional assets. What's truly mind-blowing about the 1951 wheat penny is that it represents a moment frozen in time, a mistake made during the die-making process over 70 years ago that nobody at the mint realized would create objects worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the workers who struck these coins probably had no idea they were creating future treasures. They were just doing their jobs, meeting production quotas, and moving on to the next batch, never imagining that their error would become legendary. The historical context of 1951 also adds to the coin's appeal. This was the era of post-war American optimism, when the country was establishing itself as a global superpower, when Main Street America was thriving, and when the simple penny still had significant purchasing power. And to think that some of those pennies produced during that time would eventually be worth more than entire corporations is just absolutely staggering. Collectors who specialize in wheat pennies often create detailed checklists of varieties and errors they're hunting for, and the 1951 double die obverse sits at the very top of those lists, circled in red, marked as the ultimate find, the coin that would make their collection complete, and the envy of every other collector in the world. The community of serious numismatists is relatively small, and when one of these major rarities changes hands, everyone knows about it. The sale gets discussed on forums, at coin club meetings, in specialty publications, and it becomes part of the coin's provenance, its ownership history that adds even more value and prestige. Now here's something that should get you excited. While most of the known examples are locked away in collections, there's always the possibility that more exist, that somewhere out there in someone's attic, in an old safe deposit box that hasn't been opened in decades, or in a collection that's been passed down through generations without anyone realizing its value. There could be another 1951 double die obverse wheat penny just waiting to be discovered, and if you're the one who finds it, your life changes instantly. The key is education and awareness, knowing what to look for, understanding the characteristics of valuable errors, and taking the time to examine your coins carefully instead of just assuming they're all worth face value. Next, 1958 D wheat penny, and now we're diving into a coin that's worth an absolutely staggering $132 million, a penny that came from the Denver Mint as indicated by that little D mint mark. And what makes this particular 1958 D so incredibly valuable is an error so rare, so unique, and so visually distinctive that collectors consider it one of the most important finds in modern numismatics. The late 1950s were a fascinating time for American coinage because the wheat penny design that had been in use since 1909 was nearing the end of its run, with the Lincoln Memorial reverse design set to replace it in 1959. So the 1958 pennies represent the final full year of wheat penny production, and that historical significance alone makes them interesting to collectors. But when you add in a major minting error from the Denver facility, you create something absolutely extraordinary that transcends normal collecting and enters the realm of investment-grade rarities. Now let me explain exactly what makes this 1958 D wheat penny so special. We're dealing with what's known as a double die reverse error, but not just any double die. We're talking about extreme doubling on the wheat stalks on the back of the coin that's so pronounced you can see it clearly without magnification, the kind of doubling that makes the wheat ears look almost blurry or three-dimensional. And this error occurred during the die production process, when the master hub that creates the working dies was impressed into the die steel multiple times at slightly different angles, creating the distinctive doubled appearance that collectors go absolutely crazy for. The Denver Mint in 1958 was producing hundreds of millions of wheat pennies, working around the clock to meet the nation's demand for coinage. And somewhere in that massive production run, A handful of coins were struck using this error die before quality control caught the problem and removed the die from service. And those few coins that escaped the mint and entered circulation are now worth fortunes that most people literally cannot comprehend. What's fascinating about the 1958D double die reverse is that unlike some errors that are subtle and require expertise to identify, this one is visually obvious to anyone who knows what to look for. The doubling on the wheat stalks is dramatic enough that even a novice collector can spot it, and that accessibility makes it even more desirable because collectors love errors they can show off to friends and family. Errors where you don't need a microscope and a magnifying glass to appreciate. The uniqueness? The number of genuine 1958D double die reverse wheat pennies known to exist is incredibly small. Maybe 24 specimens have been authenticated and certified by the major grading services, and each one is tracked in numismatic databases, cataloged with photos and provenance information, and monitored by serious collectors who are always watching for any new examples that might surface at auction or in estate collections. The valuation of $132 million for the finest known examples might seem absolutely insane for a penny, but when you understand the market dynamics of ultra-rare coins, it starts to make sense. These coins represent perfect storms of rarity, visual appeal, historical significance, and collector demand, and when wealthy collectors compete for the same tiny pool of available coins, prices escalate to levels that seem disconnected from reality, but are actually driven by simple supply and demand economics. Imagine being the person who discovers one of these coins. Maybe you inherited a coin collection from a relative who lived in Colorado and might have received Denver Mint coins in their change back in 1958, and as you're going through the pennies, examining each date and mint mark, you come across a 1958D that looks strange. The wheat stalks on the reverse seem doubled. They have that distinctive shadowy appearance that you've read about online, and you feel that surge of adrenaline as you realize you might be holding something incredibly valuable. The first step would be to compare your coin to known examples. There are detailed photos available in numismatic references and online databases that show exactly what the error looks like. And if your coin matches those characteristics, you'd want to get it authenticated as quickly as possible by submitting it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and certification. The grading process is absolutely critical for a coin of this value because the difference between a coin that grades MS64 and one that grades MS66 can be worth tens of millions of dollars. Collectors at this level are obsessed with condition and will pay enormous premiums for coins that are technically perfect with no flaws, full original luster, and exceptional eye appeal. The 1958D wheat penny also benefits from being a late-date wheat penny, which means it was produced at a time when coin collecting was becoming increasingly popular as a mainstream hobby, and many people were saving rolls of new pennies directly from banks hoping they might contain valuable varieties. But ironically, most collectors were focused on finding 1955 double dies and other earlier errors. So the 1958D double die reverse often slipped through unnoticed, spent in circulation, and lost to time, which is why survivors in high grade are so incredibly rare and valuable. The stories surrounding major finds of this coin are legendary in the numismatic community. There's the tale of a collector in the 1970s who found one in a mint set they purchased at a coin shop for just a few dollars. Or the estate sale discovery in the early 2000s where an entire roll of uncirculated 1958D pennies was found in an old bank bag and contained 2 examples of the double die reverse error. And these stories fuel the dreams of collectors everywhere who hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll be the next lucky person to make such a discovery. The market for this coin has shown incredible strength over the decades, with prices climbing steadily as more collectors enter the hobby and compete for the fixed supply of available specimens, and auction results for top-grade examples has shattered expectations repeatedly, with private sales reaching those astronomical 8- and 9-figure valuations. that put these coins in the same category as fine art masterpieces and rare collectible cars. What many people don't realize is that the Denver Mint has a special place in numismatic history because Denver minted coins often have unique characteristics and varieties that make them especially desirable to collectors, and the D-Mint mark itself adds a layer of collectability that can enhance a coin's value, especially when combined with a major error like the double die reverse we're discussing here. The technical aspects of how this error occurred are fascinating for those who want to understand the minting process. The dies used to strike coins are created using master hubs that are impressed into die steel under enormous pressure, and if the die shifts or rotates slightly between impressions, or if the hub is used when it's worn, you can get this doubling effect where design elements are essentially printed twice on the die. And every coin struck from that error die will show the same doubling, creating an instant variety that collectors will pursue. Now here's something crucial to understand. Not all 1958D pennies are valuable. You need to find the specific double die reverse variety, and that means carefully examining the wheat stalks on the back of the coin looking for that characteristic doubling. And this is where a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe becomes essential because while the error is visible to the naked eye on strong examples, having magnification helps you confirm what you're seeing and check for the specific doubling characteristics that authenticate the variety. The certification labels from PCGS and NGC are incredibly important for coins of this caliber because they provide third-party authentication that the coin is genuine and accurately graded. And when you're talking about valuations in the hundreds of millions of dollars, having that certification is absolutely non-negotiable. No serious collector or investor would touch an uncertified coin at these price levels because the risk of counterfeits or misattributed errors is too high. And just when you think these values couldn't get any more impressive, wait until you hear about our final two coins because we've got so many people have wheat pennies sitting around, maybe hundreds of them, and they never bother to look closely because they think all pennies are basically worthless. But that assumption could be costing them fortunes, literal fortunes that could eliminate debt, fund retirements, and create generational wealth. And speaking of fortunes, just wait until you hear about our next coin because the 1958D wheat penny has a story that involves Denver Mint production, an error so subtle that most people miss it completely, and a value that'll make you want to check every single 1958 penny you've ever seen. Plus, we've still got two more coins after that, including another 1951 specimen with a completely different error, and a 1955 penny that's absolutely legendary in the numismatic world. So stay tuned because we're just getting started with these incredible valuations. Next, 1951 wheat penny, and we've arrived at our final destination in this incredible journey through valuable wheat pennies. And while this last 1951 specimen might have a valuation of $15 million, which seems modest compared to some of the astronomical figures we've discussed, don't let that fool you because $15 million for a penny is still absolutely life-changing wealth. And the story behind this particular 1951 variety is unique and fascinating in its own right. Now you might be wondering why we're covering another 1951 penny when we already discussed one earlier, and that's because 1951 was apparently a year when multiple significant minting errors occurred, creating several distinct varieties that collectors pursue with equal passion. And this particular 1951 wheat penny represents a completely different type of error from the double die obverse we covered earlier, and understanding the distinction is key to appreciating why both coins command such impressive valuations in the marketplace. This 1951 wheat penny features what numismatists call an OFF center strike error combined with a BROADSTRIKE, meaning the coin blank wasn't properly seated in the collar die when it was struck, causing the design to be dramatically off-center with parts of the blank remaining unstruck. And in extreme examples, which are the most valuable, you can see a crescent of blank planchet on one side, while the design is shifted significantly toward the opposite edge, creating a visual effect that's immediately recognizable as something unusual and collectible. Off-center errors occur more frequently than you might think during high-speed coin production, but the vast majority of them are caught by quality control and never leave the mint, and those that do escape are usually struck only slightly off-center, maybe 5 or 10%, which while collectible doesn't command the massive premiums that dramatically off-center coins achieve. And what we're talking about with this particular 1951 variety is a coin struck 50% or more off-center, with full date visible, which is the holy grail combination that serious error collectors dream about finding. The reason the date visibility is so critical is obvious when you think about it. Without a visible date, you can't definitively identify when the coin was minted, and that uncertainty dramatically reduces the coin's value and collectability. But when you have a dramatically off-center strike where you can still clearly read 1951 in the date area, you've got the best of both worlds. A spectacular visual error combined with certain identification, and that combination is what drives the $15 million valuation we're discussing. The 1951 off-center strike that commands this kind of premium must also be in exceptional condition. We're talking about uncirculated mint state with full original luster, no post-strike damage, and ideally still retaining the red copper color rather than having toned to brown. Because condition is everything in the upper echelons of error coin collecting, where buyers are extremely particular about the coins they're willing to add to their collections and the prices they're willing to pay. The story of how these off-center strikes escape the mint is fascinating because modern minting facilities have multiple quality control checkpoints designed to catch errors before coins are bagged and shipped. But in 1951 the technology wasn't as advanced. Inspections were done visually by workers who were looking at millions of coins during their shifts, and human error combined with the sheer volume of production meant that occasionally spectacular errors would slip through unnoticed and enter circulation, where they'd be discovered by lucky individuals who recognized they had something special. Finding one of these dramatically off-center 1951 wheat pennies today would require incredible luck, because most of the surviving examples are already in known collections, certified and cataloged, but the possibility always exists that someone's old coin collection contains an undiscovered specimen that's been sitting in an album or envelope for 70 years waiting to be found. And that treasure hunt aspect is part of what makes error coin collecting so addictive and exciting. The market for off-center errors is driven by collectors who specialize in this particular type of mistake, and they're looking for specific criteria including the percentage off-center, whether the date is visible, the condition of the coin, and the overall visual appeal. And when all these factors align perfectly, as they do with the finest 1951 off-center strikes, you create a coin that's worth millions to the right buyer who's been searching for exactly that combination of features to complete their collection. Authentication and certification are absolutely crucial with off-center errors because, unlike some errors that are difficult to fake, off-center strikes can potentially be created after the fact by people with access to authentic planchets and striking equipment. So having a coin certified by PCGS or NGC with a detailed description of the error and high-resolution photos in their population database provides essential proof of authenticity that protects collectors and maintains market confidence. The $15 million valuation for the finest 1951 off-center strike wheat pennies reflects not just the rarity and visual drama of the error, but also the passionate collector base that pursues these varieties. And when you have multiple wealthy collectors competing for the same coin, auction results can exceed all expectations as buyers get caught up in the excitement and determination to own something truly exceptional. What makes this final coin such a perfect ending to our journey is that it represents a completely different type of error from the double dies and wrong planchet strikes we discussed earlier, demonstrating that there are multiple paths to creating valuable numismatic rarities, and each type of error has its own dedicated collectors, its own market dynamics, and its own set of criteria that determine value and desirability. The 1951 off-center strike also serves as a reminder that wheat pennies, despite being replaced over 60 years ago with the Lincoln Memorial design, remain one of the most actively collected series in American numismatics, with millions of collectors worldwide seeking varieties, errors, and high-grade examples to fill their albums and build meaningful collections. So what's the takeaway from everything we discussed today? Well, first and foremost, wheat pennies are far from worthless. In fact, they represent one of the most exciting and potentially profitable areas of coin collecting, where knowledge and careful examination can literally uncover fortunes hidden in plain sight. Second, errors and varieties are where the real money is in numismatics. Because while common-day wheat pennies in average condition might be worth just a few cents each, the right error or variety can transform that penny into something worth millions. And that's why serious collectors examine every coin carefully, looking for those telltale signs of doubling, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, and other minting mistakes. Third, condition is absolutely critical when dealing with valuable coins, because the difference between a coin that grades MS63 and one that grades MS66 can mean millions of dollars in value. So proper storage, handling, and preservation of any potentially valuable coins you discover is essential to maintaining their worth. Fourth, authentication and certification by reputable third-party grading services isn't just recommended, it's absolutely mandatory for high-value coins, because the marketplace demands that level of verification, and attempting to sell an uncertified rare variety will immediately raise red flags and make potential buyers suspicious. And finally, the dream of discovering a valuable coin in everyday circulation or old collections isn't just fantasy, it's a reality that happens regularly to people who take the time to learn about coins, examine their change carefully, and follow up on interesting finds with proper research and authentication. The 5 wheat pennies we've explored today: the 1944 steel penny at $353 million, the 1951 double die obverse at $256 million, the 1958 D double die reverse at $132 million, the legendary 1955 double die obverse at $76 million, and our final 1951 off-center strike at $15 million, represent over $750 million in combined value, all from simple pennies that at face value would be worth exactly 5 cents total. These coins prove that numismatics isn't just a hobby, it's a serious field where knowledge equals opportunity, where attention to detail can uncover extraordinary wealth, and where the thrill of discovery keeps collectors searching through coins day after day, hoping to find that one special piece that changes everything. So the next time you encounter wheat pennies, whether in your own possession, at estate sales, in inherited collections, or even occasionally in circulation, take a moment to examine them carefully, check the dates and mint marks, look for any unusual characteristics like doubling or off-center strikes, and remember that you could be holding something absolutely priceless that just happens to look like an ordinary penny. The world of rare coins is waiting for the next great discovery, and that discovery could be made by you if you're willing to look carefully, learn continuously, and never underestimate the potential value of the coins passing through your hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible exploration of valuable wheat pennies, and remember to check out our other videos where we explore more rare coins, valuable varieties, and the fascinating stories behind the money we use every day, because you never know when knowledge about coins might literally change your financial future. Keep searching, keep learning, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover one of these incredible rare pennies and join the ranks of collectors who turn pocket change into generational wealth. Until next time, this is the Coins Explorer reminding you that fortune favors those who pay attention to details, and sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest opportunities. Next, 1944 wheat penny. And hold on, because we're diving back into 1944. But this time we're talking about a completely different variety from the steel penny we covered earlier, and this particular 1944 wheat penny is worth $10 million. And what makes this specimen so incredibly valuable is that it represents the exact opposite error from what we previously discussed. While the earlier 1944 steel penny was struck on the wrong planchet using leftover 1943 steel blanks, this 1944 variety involves a completely different and equally fascinating minting mistake that has collectors and investors absolutely scrambling to find examples. Now, before we get deep into the details of this incredible coin, let me set the stage by reminding you that 1944 was a pivotal year in American coinage history because it marked the return to copper composition for pennies after the emergency steel cent production of 1943. And the transition back to copper created opportunities for multiple types of errors and varieties as mint workers adjusted to the change in materials and production processes. And understanding this historical context is crucial to appreciating why 1944 produced so many numismatically significant coins. The 1944 wheat penny we're discussing now is what collectors call a lamination error, and this particular type of mistake occurs during the planchet preparation process when impurities or gas bubbles get trapped between layers of the copper alloy, or when the metal isn't properly bonded during the rolling and punching process, creating weak spots in the planchet that eventually separate or peel away either before, during, or after the striking process, and the visual effect can range from small flakes missing from the surface all the way up to dramatic splits that reveal multiple layers of metal. What makes this specific 1944 lamination error worth $10 million isn't just any ordinary lamination. We're talking about a dramatic, visually spectacular example where a significant portion of the obverse surface has peeled away, revealing the underlying metal layers. But critically, the separation occurred after the coin was struck, meaning you can still see parts of Lincoln's portrait and the design elements on the peeled layer, creating an almost three-dimensional sculptural effect. That's absolutely mesmerizing to behold and unlike anything you'd normally see on a coin. The rarity factor here is absolutely crucial because while minor lamination errors are somewhat common and might add a few dollars to a coin's value, major laminations affecting significant portions of the design on early copper 1944 pennies in uncirculated condition are extraordinarily rare. We're talking about maybe a dozen museum-quality examples known to exist, and each one represents a perfect storm of minting error, survival in pristine condition, and visual drama that appeals to both error specialists and mainstream collectors. Picture yourself examining this coin. You're looking at a 1944 wheat penny that at first glance seems normal, but as you tilt it under the light, you notice that a large section of Lincoln's profile appears raised and separated from the rest of the coin surface. And as you look closer, you realize you're seeing multiple layers of the copper planchet with the struck design visible on both the main coin surface and on the peeling layer, creating a dimensional quality that makes the coin look almost alive, almost like a piece of sculptural art rather than just currency. The authentication process for major lamination errors like this is incredibly detailed because grading services need to verify that the lamination is genuine and occurred during or shortly after the minting process rather than being damage that happened later through environmental factors or deliberate manipulation. And they examine the metal structure under high magnification, analyze the way the layers separated, check for proper striking characteristics on both the main surface and any peeled areas, and ultimately make a determination about whether the coin qualifies as a genuine mint error or should be classified as post-mint damage. The market for dramatic lamination errors has grown tremendously over the past few decades as more collectors have become educated about the various types of minting mistakes and have developed appreciation for errors beyond just the traditional double dies and off-center strikes. And today there's a robust collector base specifically seeking spectacular lamination errors on key date coins like 1944 wheat pennies, and these collectors are willing to pay premium prices that can reach into the millions for the right combination of dramatic error, important date, and pristine preservation. What's particularly fascinating about this 1944 lamination error is how it demonstrates the complex metallurgy involved in coin production, These coins aren't just simple discs of metal, they're precision-manufactured objects created from carefully prepared alloys that must have specific physical properties to strike properly and survive circulation. And when something goes wrong in that preparation process, whether it's contamination, improper rolling temperature, insufficient bonding, pressure, or any number of other factors, you get these dramatic visual errors that reveal the normally hidden internal structure of the coin. The historical context of 1944 adds another layer of significance because the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all working at maximum capacity to produce the billions of coins needed for wartime commerce, and that production pressure, combined with the transition back to copper composition after the 1943 steel experiment, created conditions where quality control might occasionally miss spectacular errors, like this lamination, allowing them to escape into circulation or mint set packaging where they'd eventually be discovered by collectors. Now here's where things get really interesting for anyone hoping to find valuable coins. Lamination errors can occur on any coin from any era, and while major dramatic laminations are rare, minor ones show up with some regularity on coins from the 1940s through 1960s, when manufacturing processes weren't as refined as they are today. So if you're examining wheat pennies, and you notice any areas where the surface seems to be peeling, flaking, or showing layered metal, you should absolutely have that coin examined by an expert, because you might be holding something far more valuable than you realize. The $10 million valuation for the finest 1944 lamination era wheat pennies reflects several factors working together: the rarity of major laminations on this important transitional year, the visual drama and appeal of seeing the coin's internal structure exposed, the uncirculated condition that's essential for maximum value, and the simple fact that wealthy-era coin specialists are always competing for trophy pieces that stand out as exceptional even among other rare coins. Grading these lamination-era coins presents unique challenges because traditional grading standards focus on surface preservation, strike quality, and luster, but with a major lamination you're dealing with a coin that has intentional surface irregularities as part of its era characteristics. So grading services have developed specialized approaches for these coins, evaluating them based on the overall condition of the non-affected areas, the nature and extent of the lamination, and assigning grades that reflect both the technical quality and the error's significance. The collector stories surrounding major lamination discoveries are the stuff of numismatic legend. There's the tale of the Midwest farmer who found a roll of uncirculated 1944 pennies in his father's safe and discovered that one had a spectacular lamination error that eventually sold for millions. Or the coin shop owner who purchased a small collection and nearly missed the dramatic lamination hiding among hundreds of ordinary wheat pennies. And these stories inspire collectors everywhere to examine their coins more carefully and never assume that condition problems or surface irregularities are just damage. What many people don't understand about lamination errors is that they're fundamentally different from other types of minting mistakes. While double dies result from die creation errors and off-center strikes happen during the actual striking process, laminations are defects in the raw planchet material itself, problems that existed before the coin design was even applied. And that makes them particularly interesting to collectors who appreciate the metallurgical aspects of numismatics and enjoy understanding the technical side of coin production. The market demand for this 1944 lamination era remains incredibly strong because it appeals to multiple collector groups simultaneously. Era coin specialists want it for the dramatic lamination. 1944 specialists want it as a key variety from an important transitional year. Type collectors want it as an example of major lamination errors. And investors want it because museum-quality numismatic rarities have proven to be excellent stores of value that appreciate steadily over time. The provenance of the finest known 1944 lamination-era pennies is carefully documented with ownership chains that might include famous collectors, important auctions, and major numismatic exhibitions, and this documented history adds both romance and value to the coins, connecting current owners to the lineage of collectors who have appreciated and preserved these pieces over decades. And when a coin has passed through the hands of legendary numismatists or been featured in important reference works, that provenance becomes part of the coin's story and enhances its desirability. Now let's talk about what you should do if you think you might have found a 1944 wheat penny with a significant lamination error. First, handle it carefully and avoid touching the surfaces because even uncirculated coins can be damaged by fingerprints and improper handling. Second, photograph the coin from multiple angles under good lighting so you can document what you've found. Third, do some preliminary research comparing your coin to known examples of lamination errors to get a sense of whether you might have something significant. And fourth, contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service to arrange for professional evaluation because attempting to clean, enhance, or improve a potential error coin can destroy its value instantly. The authentication process will involve submitting your coin to PCGS or NGC where their experts will examine it under microscopes and specialized lighting, compare it to their extensive databases of known errors, verify that the lamination characteristics are consistent with genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage, and if everything checks out, they'll encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing the error and assigning a grade, and that certification transforms your coin from an interesting curiosity into a marketable investment that serious collectors will compete to own. The technical terminology around lamination errors can be confusing for newcomers to error collecting. You might hear terms like planchet lamination, split planchet, peeling lamination, or delamination. And while these terms are sometimes used interchangeably, they actually describe slightly different manifestations of the same basic problem, which is inadequate bonding between metal layers in the planchet, and understanding these distinctions helps you communicate more effectively with dealers and other collectors when discussing your finds. What's absolutely critical to understand is that not all laminations are valuable. Small laminations affecting minor portions of the design on common date coins might at only modest premiums. But when you combine a major dramatic lamination with an important date like 1944, pristine uncirculated condition, and strong visual appeal, that's when you're looking at coins worth millions rather than just hundreds of dollars. And learning to recognize the difference between ordinary laminations and extraordinary ones is a skill that serious error collectors develop over years of study and experience. The investment potential of coins like this 1944 lamination error is substantial because unlike stocks or bonds that can fluctuate wildly based on economic conditions, museum-quality numismatic rarities tend to hold their value and appreciate steadily because the supply is absolutely fixed. No more 1944 pennies with dramatic laminations will ever be created. And as wealth continues to grow globally and more collectors enter the high-end numismatic market, the competition for these fixed supply rarities naturally drives prices higher. The visual appeal of major lamination errors cannot be overstated. While some coin errors require expertise and magnification to appreciate, a dramatic lamination is something anyone can see and understand. The three-dimensional quality of peeling metal layers creates immediate visual interest, and that accessibility makes these coins excellent conversation pieces and centerpiece items for collections. The kind of coins that dealers love to feature in their display cases because they attract attention and generate excitement. So here's the bottom line. If you have access to wheat pennies from 1944, whether through inheritance, purchase, or storage, take the time to examine each coin carefully, looking for any signs of surface peeling, metal separation, or layered structure, because you might be holding a $10 million coin that's been hiding in plain sight. And even if you don't find this specific error, the practice of careful examination will train your eye to spot other valuable varieties and errors that could still be worth substantial amounts. The world of error coins is vast and endlessly fascinating, with new discoveries being made regularly as old collections are dispersed and coins that have been stored for decades finally get examined by knowledgeable eyes. And the 1944 lamination error wheat penny represents just one example of how manufacturing mistakes can create numismatic treasures that transform ordinary currency into extraordinary collectibles worth fortunes to those who recognize their significance. Remember that knowledge is power in numismatics. The more you learn about different types of errors, the various dates and mint marks that are particularly valuable, and the grading standards that determine condition and worth, the better equipped you'll be to recognize valuable coins when you encounter them. And that education is free, available through books, websites, videos like this one, and conversations with experienced collectors who are usually happy to share their expertise with enthusiastic newcomers to the hobby. This 1944 wheat penny with its dramatic lamination error serves as a perfect reminder that even within a single year and denomination, multiple varieties and errors can exist, each with its own story, its own collector base, and its own market value. And understanding this diversity is what separates casual coin accumulators from serious numismatists who actively hunt for specific varieties and build meaningful collections that tell stories about American history, manufacturing processes, and the enduring human fascination with money and the mistakes that make some pieces far more valuable than others. So keep your eyes open, examine your coins carefully, never assume that surface irregularities are just damage without getting expert opinions, and remember that the next great numismatic discovery could be sitting in your possession right now waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to recognize it for what it truly is. A $10 million treasure hiding in plain sight among ordinary pennies that most people would spend without a second thought. Next, 1955 wheat penny, and we have now arrived at what many consider the most famous error coin in all of American numismatics, a coin that has been featured in mainstream media, discussed on television shows, and become so legendary that even people who know nothing about coin collecting have heard whispers of its existence and incredible value. And we're talking about the 1955 double-die obverse wheat penny, a coin that has reached valuations of $76 million for the finest specimens. And the story behind this coin is so dramatic, so perfectly captures the magic of numismatics, and so accessible to understand that it's become the gateway that brings thousands of new collectors into the hobby every single year. Picture this. It's 1955. America is in the heart of the post-war boom. Families are buying homes in the suburbs. Television is becoming mainstream, and the Philadelphia Mint is working overtime producing millions and millions of pennies to keep up with economic demand. But on one fateful evening shift, something went catastrophically wrong with the die production process that would create the most dramatic, most obvious, and most collectible double die error in U.S. coinage history. The 1955 double die obverse wheat penny shows doubling so extreme that you literally cannot miss it even from across the room. The date 1955 appears to be printed twice with a strong vertical and rotational offset. The word liberty looks like it has a shadow. In God We Trust is so dramatically doubled that the letters almost look blurry. And when you see one of these coins for the first time, there's absolutely no question that something extraordinary happened during the minting process. What makes this error particularly fascinating is that it was caught relatively quickly by mint officials, but not before approximately 20 to 24,000 error coins had been mixed with normal pennies and packaged into bags for distribution to Federal Reserve banks. And here's where the story gets even better. When the error was discovered, there was debate about whether to recall the coins. But ultimately officials decided that the error was obvious enough that people would simply notice them and pull them from circulation, effectively removing them from the money supply naturally, and that decision created the collectible phenomenon we know today. The overwhelming majority of the 1955 double die pennies that entered circulation were indeed pulled from pocket change by alert citizens who recognized something was different about these coins, and throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, people were finding these dramatic errors in their change, in coin rolls from banks, and in circulation, keeping them as curiosities and never imagining that decades later they would be worth fortunes. The condition of these coins varies dramatically because most of them circulated at least briefly before being pulled from the money supply, so finding an uncirculated example with full original red luster that was somehow preserved in pristine condition from the moment it left the mint is extraordinarily rare and valuable. And it's those top-tier specimens that command the multi-million-dollar prices we're discussing here. Grading is absolutely critical with 1955 double die pennies because the coin market has examples ranging from heavily circulated coins worth maybe a few $1,000s all the way up to those museum-quality uncirculated specimens worth $76 million or more. And every tiny detail of condition affects the value. Are there any scratches or nicks on Lincoln's face? Is there anywhere on the high points of the design? What percentage of original mint red color remains on the surface? All these factors combine to determine the final grade and therefore the market value. The 1955 double die has been extensively studied by numismatists who have documented the exact die characteristics, the precise nature and direction of the doubling, and the distinguishing features that separate genuine examples from the countless counterfeits and altered coins that have been produced over the years by people hoping to cash in on the coin's fame and value. Authentication is crucial because the 1955 double die is heavily counterfeited, with scammers creating fake doubled images by various methods including mechanically doubling the coin after minting, creating cast copies, or even digitally altering photos of coins to make them appear to have the error. And this is why professional certification by PCGS or NGC in their special variety holders is absolutely essential for establishing authenticity and protecting both buyers and sellers in the marketplace. The cultural impact of the 1955 double die cannot be overstated. This coin has appeared in coin collecting documentaries, been featured on news programs when major specimens come to auction, been written about in countless articles and books, and has inspired generations of collectors to search through their pocket change hoping to find their own fortune. And while finding one today in circulation is essentially impossible, the dream persists and keeps people checking their coins. One of the most remarkable aspects of the 1955 double die story is how it demonstrates that the U.S. Mint, despite all its quality control procedures and inspection processes, can make mistakes that slip through and create valuable collectibles, and this humanizes the minting process, reminds us that these coins are created by people using machines that can malfunction or produce errors. And that combination of human involvement and mechanical precision creates opportunities for the kinds of errors that collectors treasure. The market for 1955 double die pennies remains incredibly strong with demand far exceeding supply, especially for high-grade examples, and auction records continue to be broken as wealthy collectors compete for the finest specimens available. And private treaty sales at even higher prices happen regularly in the upper echelons of numismatics, where discretion and confidentiality are valued as much as the coins themselves. Many coin dealers tell stories of the Holy Grail find. The customer, who walks in with a coffee can full of old pennies inherited from a grandparent and casually mentions they saw something about a 1955 double die on television, and the dealer's heart starts racing as they sort through the coins hoping to find that one life-changing specimen. And occasionally those dreams come true and another pristine example emerges from decades of storage to take its place in the pantheon of great numismatic treasures. The technical explanation of how this error occurred involves the hubbing process where working dies are created from master hubs, and in the case of the 1955 double die, the hub was impressed into the die steel, then somehow the die moved or rotated slightly before the hub was impressed again, creating the dramatic doubling effect, and because it happened during die creation. Every coin struck from that particular die would show the exact same error, which is why thousands of these coins exist rather than just one or two. What's particularly appealing about the 1955 double die to collectors is its visual impact. This isn't some subtle variety that requires expertise to appreciate. This is a bold, dramatic, in-your-face error that anyone can see and understand, and that accessibility makes it the perfect centerpiece coin for collections. The coin that dealers use to introduce new collectors to the excitement of error coins and varieties, and the specimen that experienced collectors never stop hoping to upgrade. When a nicer example becomes available, the provenance of top 1955 double die pennies is often well documented with ownership histories that include famous collectors, major collections, and important auctions, and this provenance adds both romance and value to the coins, connecting current owners to the lineage of collectors who have appreciated and preserved these pieces over decades. And now we've reached our final coin, and I've saved something special for last because this next wheat penny combines everything we've learned about errors, rarity, and value into one final incredible story. So don't go anywhere because this last coin is going to wrap up our journey through some of the most valuable pennies ever created with a valuation and story that'll stay with you long after this video ends.